would like to welcome you. Welcome. So this was our last screening and our last panel session. My name is Ekrem, Buğra, Büte. I'm from the Subtitles magazine, and I prepared this session together with my colleague, and we're doing the closing session today. Well, about the movie, we have our director Zeynep Dadak and art director Aslı Dadak together with us on the session. So we'll be just chatting, and if you have any questions, of course I'll be receiving the questions. That's what we will be doing. So I'll be starting first. So, who is this Kömürciyan? Hi. Thank you so much for coming. Yes. We have been collaborating with Altyazi Subtitles magazine. These are just our family, friends. We're growing up together. Thank you so much for including our movie to their schedule. And I'd like to also express my gratitude to MARUF team, to the foreign team, because we always forget who is Kömürciyan. Of course, let me tell you, Aslı is at the same time is a producer of this film. So, if she is obsessed with a movie, if she is obsessed, she's just saving the movie at the same time. It's just savior of the movie. We won't be entering the details, but developing a documentary. If you want to do a documentary, you have to create the conditions, economics conditions. I'm doing both fiction and documentary. This type of creative creation is important in Turkey. This is one of the things that I follow in Turkey. There are a lot of documentary producers. 3 women, Aslı Dadak, Zeynep Dadak, Pınar Bağcı, has been working on this project since the beginning. They believed in this, and they do this since the beginning. And at the same time, well, maybe they neglected some friends, and it's like they are convinced somehow, because they didn't want them to go crazy. So this is being realized thanks to some people, thanks to people who believed in us. Maybe you know how hard it is to do in this fiction, in this documentary. You cannot just grab a camera and get out on the streets. It's not shooting a documentary. It's more than that. It's beyond that. Sorry that I started from a different point of view. Thank you so much for pronouncing the other names. Maybe I can extend my question. Of course. This is a very open movie. We can see a lot of stuff going on at the same time. There's a text, there's a narrator, there is a date. At the same time, we can say that there is Istanbul, and there is a text. It is guiding us, as you can see. So it's good to start from there. I believe it will be comfortable to start from there. Who is Kömürciyan? How did you meet that? And from the moment you met. So could you please elaborate this period? Kömürciyan is a person who lived in Istanbul in the 17th century, a very prominent translator and intellectual from Armenian collective, and he has an inventory about the fires in Istanbul, and in this book is talking about the history of Istanbul. In 17th century, he completes in 30 years. I hope the movie gets completed before 30 years. It's 50 pages or something. The book is incredible, but it's a very dense book. Cemal Kafadar and Suna Kafadar talked to me about this book. Cemal has been my guide, my friend for a long time. He knows about my love for Istanbul, he knows about my interests, and he knows my interests about taking a look at the relationship with movie and history. He proposed me this book, and this book will make a great movie, he said. Yes, that was the time when this flame sparked. Well, I would like to give the floor to Aslı. After it turned into movie, how was the process? Could you please just talk about this? I'd like to welcome you all, and at the same time I would like to thank to Subtitles Altyazi magazine team, and especially to MARUF team, forum team. I am an art director. What do? I do feature movies, and I design feature movies with director. I am the co-creator of this fictional world. So in this documentary, I became a producer. I became a producer on the way. I sort of fell into that. I was familiar with the designer of the production, and I learned how different it could be, especially in a city like in Istanbul. I fell off the paths, labyrinths. I try to visualize. I have this beautiful director, and I have my sister, as well as being my sister, of course. I started out with them. It is fascinating, since Istanbul is a marvelous place to be as an art director. You can take a look, you can discover every corner, you can take a reference, you can use as a decorum for your next assignment. Istanbul offers you a lot of data. At the same time, I see that my sister just wanted to take a look at Istanbul, just to discover and establish new roads. It was like a translation project for us. It was like a helping out tour. Translation. I believe this is very valuable that you say it's a translation. Yes. The movie is opening up itself to some other type of translations. Yes, of course, it's a gaze on Istanbul. Of course, we are gathering here around the Kent Cinema, City Cinema. This is the closing movie of these 2 days programs. This was a gaze to movie, thinking about city. We have been talking about this. Today, maybe we can talk about since I first watched. I've been thinking about, as I said to Zeynep, I had this sensation of Tanpınar, the author Tanpınar, taking a look at Istanbul has its own myth, has its own history, mythology. It, by itself, it is very much related with the topography of the city, where you can gaze Bosphorus, the city, the sea, everything. When you hear in the text of Kömürcüyan, together, including all this, I would like to ask, maybe we can include how did you really talk about this movie? So it means that also transforming this heritage into something. How was your approach for this? So when you are talking about this, owning this heritage, what was your key point? So, what makes this book is a good adaptation to cinema? Why did Jamal tell me this? I had two names in my mind. One is navigation. Navigating means it is like navigating in waters, in Bosphorus. Another meaning could be, as we know, in Turkish it means watching. So this word has two meanings to it. So I imagine it is like reimagining Istanbul as a water city. It is the experience of taking a look at the city. When you transfer it, so how can you construct a visual language? It was an important part. Sometimes your story is important, sometimes the form is important, maybe translation or adaptation. For adaptation, we use translation. Why? Because we are adapting Kömürcüyan's text. It was not adapting this text as in per se. It was just a point of inspiration for us. Where do I stand in Istanbul of today? How can I relate myself to ways of seeing and the concept of city? Then created these layers. If you have any questions from the hall, from the listeners, audience, please do not hesitate. If you do not have any questions, I can continue. Well, I'd like to talk to Aslı once again. Aslı, two of you together, more than asking what does an art director do. This is all about co-director, artistic direction. So sometimes it is realistic, sometimes it is fantastic. When you think about with all this heritage, we are thinking about 350 years of time, period of time, when you are re-establishing those scenes, working from that point of view. Could you please just elaborate a little bit on that? Well, in this sense, in all these creative adventure, art director or visual director, we have two directors. You have to understand what they're trying to do visually. It's like helping them out. So we have two creative teams, visual director and arts director. So as a result, Zeynep is visualizing a world that she wants to see. Well, she needs to understand. We have to comprehend and contribute as an art director. That's our job as an art director. Then co-creating it together. Well, creator and director of this movie has their own aesthetic choices. So what can we do? In this sense, Istanbul has these cinematographic choices, opportunities. So before the shooting period, there is a route that we have to create. That's what we see in the back side. It's like a decorum. It is something that we can use. They offer you these layers all with the cinematography. Well, in the route of Kömürcüyan, when we continue as a creative team, Florian Hayes, well, we are following their route. We are following their route. So it's like believing in the power of cinema. It's like co-creating, collaborating. So let me tell you something concrete. Florana, visual director, and our Aslı Dadak Barış Yılmaz. Thank you so much to our art department. I just said two things. Floran, could you please create a flowing frame, something that flows without cutting this camera? It's like watching, gazing the Bosphorus. When you're gazing Bosphorus, that sensation of undividedness. And in Kömürcüyan's text, we see something like that. Sometimes they talk about this. He transcends his body. He starts writing this in 16th century. I believe that this is in a point of Sarayburnu. He is telling that I am gazing Topkapı in my boat. Geographically, it's not possible. When we are studying the maps, we say no. So it's like he is seeing a drone. He is seeing through the eyes of drone. He is just approximating to Topkapı Palace, and he's offering us something we can't see. So it is invisible to the eye, something we can't see. It is, the original name is different. Some things we can only see with the help of movie. So from Floran, I ask one thing. How can we create this? How can we ascend? And Aslı and Barış, I ask you one thing, I say. In the frame, just give me a cue. Just give me something. Just let me follow you. Sometimes I didn't. It's not important where you go, how you go. It's important that you flow. Where are we at? It's like an experience. Something like an experience. And they told me this yellow raincoat. It's like a cliche. But at the same time, in Istanbul, you will see it's something. It's like a cliche. We needed that cliche. Art department. It's like a color. It's like a color in the frame. Maybe it draws our attention back to the frame. And from the visual department, we can say it's like a work. It's like a work.
Yani buradan aslında ben biraz bütün bu...
Well, multilayerism. Let's talk about this multilayerism. As we said before, the movie opens itself up to the weavers. It is not lecturing. It is giving opportunities. It is using these areas, gray areas. Sometimes it is more inclined to fantastic. It directs to perception. Sometimes it is more realistic than expected. So I have this question. Of course, it's a multi-layered thing. On one hand, we can say that it is something that we use as movie writers, but we can freely say that, use it. The reason is we can only narrate Istanbul like this. This is the impression that I have of Istanbul. Yeah, I have to ask this from the point of narrator. There is a narrator, there is Kömürcüyan, there is a director, and there is a history. And on the other hand, we have a narrator, and narrator is Kadar. There are visitors, there are guests, there are actors, actresses. So there is a dialogue. Dialogue is important. So who is the narrator of this movie? Is not my question, of course, certainly. But what's your take on that, Zeynep? We studied a lot. Like for 3 years. For 3 years, we shot at 3 neighborhoods, and we studied archives. Do they have pictures? Do they have miniatures of these streets? What do we have? How can I show? I have to know this. Where is this part? What type of stories do they have? I have to understand. We encountered a form, but what can we put in this space? How can we convey what Kömürcüyan is narrating? I'm only narrating his route. So about these layers, you have seen ballads, you see bricks. Behind these bricks, you see a well from Byzantine times, and you see a building of aluminium. It's all there. It is all there. You don't have to do anything. The city has its own layer. Sometimes it gives us a very bad sensation, as like a sense of destruction. Sometimes it gives you a hope and opportunity, a sense of hope and opportunity. These were the two dominant feelings. So, in response to your question, in the life, intellectually, I don't really believe in one message I narrated, and that is the message. Neither as a person nor as an audience. I don't believe it. I believe in dialogues. I believe in multi-narratives. I believe, for example, there is a voice in the documentaries, and you always get convinced to their messages. No, I don't believe that these dominant voice. So it's like a question to the audience, and the answer gets from the audience. So it's like a dialogue between these two. So maybe it's the tiring movie, but maybe you can watch the movies. You can relate to these movies differently. So what type of movie have I watched? Or what type of movie do I want to watch? So this is like the voice of the audience. That's what I say. That's what I think. Yes, I agree totally. I'm asking the whole if you have any questions. So, well, do we have a question? Well, thank you so much. Yes, I would like to listen to more about this preparation phase when you are navigating through these neighborhoods, all these historical places, sites, when you are getting a close look at these buildings. Of course, there are limitations to these movies. Maybe it's more than it can fit into these movies. There's a narrative to this movie. So in this investigation period, so what type of Istanbul discovery did you make? So what didn't fit in this movie? How? So on this road, on this journey that you embarked to produce as a movie, I'd like to listen to your relationship with Istanbul, how that transformed. I want to hear more about this. So what I asked Aslı, we have so many data, so many hard disk. So yes. Well, joking aside, as I said, on other platforms, how we can evaluate all these documents. It's a very serious and large archive.
Mesela geçen sene bir Aksanat'ta
Last year in Aksanat, we arranged an exhibition that's called Prison. Together with the scenes with the water, I connected. It was like a 5 minutes, and on this 5 minutes, Erdem Helvacıoğlu made the design, and on this exhibition area, it converted into an installation. So the material that we collected, there are things that we are not using. It is like an extension of the relationship that we have with Istanbul. It can be construction of a new exhibition or something else, because we have materials more than enough, I believe. Zeynep and myself have a very specific, unique relationship that we establish with Istanbul. When we see ourselves in the role of art director, of course, we can see parts. Something that comes up for all these creative parts, creators. Istanbul is a blessing. Istanbul is a blessing. in Eminönü, you can see in that crowd, you can enter to that inn. I've been doing that for the last 22 years, but in the end, I find an inn that I haven't seen before. It is very impressive in that relationship. In the pre-production, you are navigating through those inns, and we are seeing as the basketeers, and that 100 years ago it was a basket seller's place, and it is still basket seller's place. When they're talking about coffee place, it is still a coffee place. After 100 years, we can see that it is done in the same place, at the same pace. It is really important. When we see the transformation of Istanbul, it is also very important in a point where we lose everything. I'm not saying it from a nostalgic point of view. We have all these textures. We are losing the textures. We became memoryless. When we take a look at a walk on the Istiklal Street, I can no longer remember the bookstores that used to be there. It is closed, but we do not know what is there. This is about following a movie of Istanbul. It was very exciting.
Eminönü'ne gidiyorum diyen bir insana da dünyada kaç kişi inanır bilmiyorum.
So I go to Eminönü district in order to just relax myself. No one will believe it, I'm sure, but yes, Eminönü is important, but especially in all the books of Kömürcüyan, Suriçi district is a place that we do not live. Maybe there are people who grew up in Eminönü, Rami.
Kurulmuş bir ilişki ama yani dolayısıyla o
We're not natives of Istanbul either, so when you are even born in Rami, you don't live in Rami, the center of the city, moved to another places. What happened to Suriçi of Istanbul? That's the question. All that line looks different. Edirne Kapı, I didn't know before making this movie. I didn't know its relationship with Balat. I believe it is. It is like you cross the bridge. You cross the Balat from Kadir Has University and you proceed to Edirne Kapı and then you go to Yeni Kapı. I didn't have that route. Now I have that route. So it is like a comprehension of Istanbul. Zeytinburnu, so I am reshaping, remodeling, remapping Istanbul in my head. As Aslı says, it's like an adventure following this route map, but what type of map do we have? So this is the creation, this is the question that we can ask. So our perception of Istanbul has changed a lot.
Oradan devam etmek de iyi olur gibi geliyor bana. Yani biraz.
So maybe we can continue from that point. Well, in the movie, there is a narrator. The movie has an issue with time. From the first minute, you understand it's talking about Istanbul, but there's a voice that talks us from 17th century. Well, in just a word, you see 350 years. I think about the opening part of this movie. There's an iconic Istanbul image, and also we see the transformational part. It's something that we cannot detect. I believe I myself am from Istanbul. It is something that pains us. It is something that hurts us because there's a sense of losing, these Armenian graves. So we see 6th and 7th October, and in Taksim we see Gezi. So it's a sensation of losing, and there's also a sensation of heritage. That's what we see. The movie creates a main sensation. That's the main sensation.
yer burası oldu aslında. Yani bir anda bir kayıp, bir anda miras hissi.
It gives you a sense of heritage and sense of losing, loss. It tells a lot about our lives. Taking a gaze at Istanbul is something like that, and that's what I think. Istanbul, gazing Istanbul, being in Istanbul, together with all the nostalgia. It is nostalgic. It is passing time with Istanbul. This is like that. So it's like a geographical thing. At the same time, it is something that we create. Well, that's why I gave Tanpınar example. In that novel, Huzur, they get on the boats, so visible or invisible, they make you dream about Istanbul. Maybe they close their eyes, listen to Istanbul. Maybe they're thinking about the hills of Istanbul. It is about gazing Istanbul. So I don't really have a question. It's just like my head is wandering. So I'm just talking. Thank you.
Özür dilerim sorudan önce.
I'm sorry. I'd like to thank our translators. Well, they're doing a great job. Thank you so much to our translators. And you had to translate this. Well, my name is Sana from Kadir Has University. My question is this something that is very similar to Buğra's comment. When I'm watching the movie, when I take a look at Istanbul, Byzantine times, when I see that aluminium, yes, I see a sensation, I feel a sensation of loss, but my sensation is rather than a loss. It is like you see there's a transformation through time, and this transformation is not a loss. It is like something to watch, something to gaze, something to follow. So we need to be open to that transformation. That's the sensation that I have from the movie. So what do you think about? What's your take on this perspective? I believe it's a very positive perspective for us. Yes, it's both. I believe nostalgia. Nostalgia word is a very contaminated word. There's no such thing as we cannot miss the past. We can miss the past, but past is not a perfect and painless and sinless place. So nostalgia is a problematic word because we are using it that way. Of course, we can request, we can wish to see another Istanbul, we can have the sensations of loss. But on the other hand, just like you say, this sensation, that was my phrase. This city has been transformed from all of the years. So documenting this is important. Touching on this is important. But we have to also make this special. And so this change is of magnitude that cannot be compared to any other thing. So I'm saying this scientifically, from a scientific point of view. I researched it myself, so it's a very fundamental change. That brings us to today. Yeah, we can talk about this. We can miss the past, we can be excited for the future, for today. Gaze, perception, observation is important. Yes, maybe we are heartbroken, maybe we are hopeless, maybe we can say we love Istanbul, maybe we change our minds 10 times a day. It's a very difficult city, damn. It's a very difficult, complicated city, and we also say there's no such city in the world, so it is very particular part of the life. So it's like a strategy that I've used in my movies. One viewer from the video said, "So is it always a gray skies? Why is it always depressive?" Yeah, it was not something we planned. Well, we shot the documentary in 3 different periods, and well, that was the weather that we had. But sometimes we have seen sunshine early in the morning. Well, I was full of hope. Well, it was just based off having a relation with the movie. It's not just one unique feeling.
Merhaba.
I live in Seven Hills. I live in Balat district. When we listen to it from the author, it's a city of fairy tales, especially from the authors of that times. There is Agop. Agop talks about this place. Well, when I read Agop, I felt that it was like a fairy tale. Well, in that sense, Istanbul, as mentioned in the movie, it was a place full of gardens, full of nuts gardens, full of fruit gardens. It is such a place. But in this movie, we see that very fast transformation of Istanbul. We cannot see that part. Also, we see something that's lost from Istanbul, old Istanbul, non-Muslim. In each part, they talk about non-Muslims, and some districts are only consist of non-Muslims. Today, in Istanbul, we cannot see that. In the narrative of that period, and narrative of today, we see something that is being disappearing. Was it difficult? Let me just give you my own answer. For example, these fruit gardens, vegetable gardens. So it's not just that I know about this agricultural cultivating, but seeing a city farm, some place, a terrain that people are working for 700 years is in itself is a romantic idea, but it is very realistic. We have in Istanbul Yedikule city farms, and people are cultivating and finding means to survive with the families. Of course, you know this area where, well, I didn't know that they didn't have this cultivation potential. Well, now they're fighting for these city farms. When I entered the area, for me, it was like a loss of time, timeless place. Maybe it is a very poetic part, something that we see in the books. And one of these places was these farms. When you walk in these lettuce, for example, I was emotional when I saw these lettuce. It was very emotional. Agop Baronian. It is about the districts of Istanbul in 19th century. It's also very interesting. In 19th century, we can see that the Kömürcüyan's book, you see it was just 2,200 years later. We see another description of Istanbul. In that sense, of course, I'm not I'm not comparing myself to any other person. So as a note for future, it's something that impacts me a lot. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Well, for me, it is very poetic. I believe that there are magical poetic places. There are places that I want to go back. Well, sometimes when I feel depressed, I always went back to the city gardens. I went to city farms. So it was one of my strategies. It was to maintain our mental health. Of course, that was one of my strategies that I followed. Well, maybe in the beginning, these documentaries, when you are shooting documentaries, maybe you can say, from all of a sudden you cannot just proceed to shoot all of a sudden. When you talk about Istanbul, there is a disadvantage. It's very complicated. It is very expensive. Maybe also it is interesting. Like a Istanbul documentary from Turkey, we couldn't find any funds from Turkey, and this documentary was facilitated by the resources of other countries. So this amazes me each and every time I think about. So these are very limited resources, of course, but when we talk about shooting in Istanbul, some places are politically unwanted places. They do not want cameras. Some places are very inviting. Please do shoot in those places. And in those places, of course, you have to pay the price of shooting in those areas. In terms of budget, it's costly. Or maybe they're under some type of protections. So you have to secure your own camera person, own production team, but you cannot protect yourself, but you have to encounter people from native to these neighborhoods in all these process. City farms play a crucial role in terms of romanticism as well as production. In terms of production, it is an area where you can go freely and easily. You can turn back to that place. Of course, there is this Kumkapı district, Kumkapı adventure that I always talk about. Kumkapı is a place that has to be. It's a very different layer. It has very different route, very different layer. It is in that route. It has to be there. Our director wants to shoot there, but we cannot get any permission because they have this immigration bureau. For any other political reasons, we cannot enter that area. I always think about all this production area. Of course, the most complicated part was shooting in Gezi Park and in Kumkapı district. Physically, we have been attacked and our records of camera were erased. We used other director. Maybe we entered from that area. Well, we have survived. Some other places continue. within all these aesthetic choices, we can see the production in Istanbul. It has a price. Well, as you say, Kumkapı was an answer. We talk about a very multicultural life. In Kumkapı, there are people from different nationalities. If you go, you see that that's another universe. It's very inspiring. It is. It is very inspiring. It's admirable, but for Immigration Bureau, for other reasons, it's very politicized, and so there was this palace of Byzantine emperor. So what can we get? So the district next to Balad is very complicated. So it's really important. Sometimes you cannot do it at once. You have to revisit, you have to write it down, you have to know the place. So research plays a crucial role. Thank you. That was a very long answer, I'm sorry.
Ben bir genel şeye baktım. Başka soru isteyen var mıydı diye.
Well, maybe we can also talk about the movie of the name of the movie. It also makes a reference to Atıf Yılmaz movie, Beautiful Istanbul. It was the beginning of the 60s, so they are taking a look at Istanbul with a lost sensation of loss and grief, and something that we felt. Now I can see that they have been feeling it in the beginning of the 60s. That's a very feature movie. That features this. So for the choice of this name of the movie, maybe we can talk also, maybe we can talk about the reference on Yeşilçam. All these movies, something that we see, all of these, there are references. Where do these movies stand? We're always, I'm sure you have thought about all these details. That's one of my questions. Well, I can say that I can live in this movie. I can live with this movie the rest of my life. Well, that's something else in terms of cinema, in terms of movies. We made some screening, we made some analysis. You see just the tiny part. Romeo, the cameraman of the Lumiere brothers, it was one of the first images that they shot. It is 1970s, just after the invention of cinema. You can see it's like Kömürcüyan's gaze. It was a different version of Kömürcüyan's gaze from the boat. So it's a sliding camera. The first image of Istanbul is a sliding camera sliding in the water. See, it automatically is located in the space relationship of this movie and Istanbul. So we can also enrich this. So we can also see that in the 60s, Istanbul has different representations. Oh, beautiful Istanbul. This movie has a different place in our hearts. It's a milestone. It's like bidding a farewell to Istanbul. It's like a subgenre in Yeşilçam movies. It's one of these best examples. On the other hand, so it's the maybe Atıf Yılmaz version. Ömer Kavur has another version of Oh Beautiful Istanbul movie. It is about a woman in Istanbul, woman that is in Istanbul. So it is important. This story is about that woman. Well, the combination of these two movies. So it was like the heart of melancholy. It was like a place of loss. It was like a place of melancholy. Müjdear, that actress, has this scene where she walks in a Galata Tower. So it is just a place of melancholy and sadness. It is conveying this feeling of sadness. So that was the source of for the name of the movie, and thanks to the contributions of Cemal Kafadar. So göz, eye, güzel, beautiful. It's like a relation. So güzel is also in Azeri Turkish. It gives a sensation of being another language. So we said, okay, let's put it this way, and let the audience decide. Well, we couldn't make this word games in English. We didn't dare, indeed. Well, let's talk, while we're talking about these world of references, flowing camera, maybe we can make a reference to Florin. Well, let's talk about Florin from the context of multi-layerness of this movie. Of course, they are connected, interconnected, intertwined, but without being intertwined. They can exist without being connected to each other. So a camera person can act as they wish without narrative or meaning or information directing the camera. It is free. It's just flowing. It is navigating its own way, its own path, as a soul, as a spirit. Well, is it something that you deliberately decided? Or, my reference was in all these heritage, of course, when the movie starts first. We see the big boats, big ships, and I felt that I was at the end of a place where the life ends, and I asked Florin Eren is art director of this movie. So let's talk about this point of view of the camera. Maybe you know Reha Erdem's Hayat Var movie. Well, Florin is known as Reha Erdem's visual art director. I didn't know that Florin made these documentaries also because we had these limitations, budget limitations. We didn't have this access to the cameras they wanted. How many? Yeah, I believe we have 5 different cameras. Well, one of them we could rent just 3 days, 5 days. We had 16 millimeters, etc. So in that sense, Florin was like our playmate. Florin brings a gimbal, we try that. Maybe it's like jumping, and then, we try something else. So it's like we tried a great variety of things. Between art directors, there's a fetish of these devices. Sometimes you have to accept that you can shoot, you cannot do it. So Florin has this aesthetic consciousness. But for me, the emphasis should be about, as Aslı well knows, it's always talking with producers, because I'm the one asking, and Aslı is the one who's not giving. For me, Florin's magic was using 5 different cameras, different gimbals, drones, everything. This has a better lens, this is cheaper, this is that. So Florin was a playmate for us. So that was our relationship with the visual art director. On paper, maybe it's good, but maybe when you go on the set, no, they say, I only use that, I only this, it's my light. Of course, we see the limitations. So the best thing in the creative process, I always call it productive flexibility. productive flexibility was very rewarding. It was very rewarding to work with. Florian, any other questions, please? We still have time. 15 minutes. Well, let's wrap up. I have in my notes, so it is this story, the real story is the story that you find behind the things that you think you know. Or for the last 2 days, all that we have to, it's like an excuse to all the things that we do here. So it's an honor to close this session with this. Indeed. So what is behind the product? What is behind the product? We are looking for it, but we know we can't find, but we're still looking for it. Thank you so much for being part of this session. Thank you for the movie. Also, a general closing remark, if you let me. We have been here for the last 2 days. We, as a cinema foundation, cinema association from Subtitles Movie, thank you so much for your participation. So the first and the biggest gratitude goes to Aslı Dadak, team from MARUF team. Thank you so much to technical team, and thank you to our translators. And last but not the least, I would like to thank Ayça Şifti, Yetkinlere in person. Thanks to them, we are here and we have been talking about this. That's it. Thank you.